This is Bearded Appliance Repair, and we're going to help you fix it. Howdy, folks. We got a Maytag French door refrigerator we are looking at today. This one in particular is having ice maker problems. Just simply not making ice, and we're going to get into it, diagnose it, see what the problem may be. And it happens to be the ice maker, and we're going to replace it as well in this video. So if you're here for the replacement, just go ahead and skip ahead a little bit if you guys are looking for that, because this is a little bit more in depth than a regular old ice maker change out, but you'll see that if you are looking for that. But anyways, we're going to get into this and show you how I got to that conclusion. So if this video helps, give it a like, subscribe, comment if you have any questions, and thanks for watching, y'all. Let's get to it. All right, the first thing we need to do is take off this cover that covers the main part of this ice maker. And it's a little tricky to get this one off. Only way I've been able to get these off is get a screwdriver and pop the top up and pry it off. It can be pretty tough, especially if you got big hands or something like that, but eventually you'll be able to get this cover off. Once you get that off, we can get in here and see what's up. Next, we're going to take out that screw that holds on that white piece there. We need that off so we can get in there and jump what we need to jump to get this ice maker started. So I'm going to show you on every one of these holes, you got a letter, and then it corresponds to what it's for. Like V is for the valve, T is for the thermostat, H is for the heater, N is for neutral, L is for line, and the M is for the motor. The line voltage, which is that L, that's where we're going to be checking power, making sure it gets power to it. So I got my leads in there, and right now it's 0 volts. But on this particular model, to get power to that ice maker, you have to get into diagnostics, and you do that by shutting the left door, holding the 2 leftmost buttons on the display. Hold it for 3 seconds. You'll get some noise and stuff, and then when you get there, you want to go to test 25. It activates automatically, so once you get there, you just open the door, and you should have some power there. If you don't, you're probably looking at a control board. But we got power there, so our next step is to jump between the T and the H, and that makes it think it's ready for harvest, and this ice maker is going to start turning. So I got this thing jumped, and you can see that bell arm is already starting to raise. And this ice maker, it is slowly moving. So for a full cycle to go through, it may take a few minutes. So we're going to let this thing ride and see what happens. What's supposed to happen is this ice maker is supposed to make a full circle, and once it gets to the end of its cycle, it'll fill with water. This one in particular kept going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. It wouldn't stop. So this tells us right away that this is a bad ice maker. If this thing goes all the way around and you can hear the voltage come on for the water valve and it just doesn't fill, you'll be looking at something other than the ice maker. You're looking at a fill problem. But in this case, it is the ice maker, so we are going to get in here and swap it out. Once you determine it's the ice maker, you got to get this cover off, and I got it out here showing you because there's that little tab, and you got to stick a screwdriver through that hole and push that tab down so you can pull that cover off. It pulls off towards you, and it's a little tricky getting that sucker off too. My first time, it probably took me 20 minutes to figure that out. I just couldn't get it. So if you guys are having trouble, I understand. I've been in your shoes. Keep at it. You'll get it off. Once you get that off, it exposes that harness, and then you can disconnect that harness. And then there's a clip right next to the ice maker on the left-hand side. Once you pull that out of it, or to the right, it should free up the ice maker, and you can pull it towards you. So it's a little tricky, but you guys will get it. And once you get it out, then you can swap out for the new ice maker. And this new ice maker kit, it comes with a lot. It comes with 2 harnesses, but you only need one of them. There's 2 types of ice makers on this one. One has a push to start button and the other one doesn't. So if you have a push to start button, you'll need one harness. And if you don't have a push to start button, which this one is, you'll need the other harness. And all you got to do is just match them up and make sure they're the same. But the reason you got to change out the harness is because this new ice maker, which is the older version ice maker, which lasts a lot longer, which is a lot better. So I don't mind doing this kind of job because this ice maker will last a lot longer than the previous ice maker, but the connections are not the same size. See how small that one is? On that one, it's probably, I don't know, 30-40% bigger. So you got to swap out harnesses, or else, well, because that old harness just plainly isn't going to fit in the new harness. So that's the only change, is the connection to the ice maker. But it's a good thing. Once you get it done and out of the way, you won't have to do it again. But now we're going to go ahead and get this ice maker off. I tipped this thing upside down and there's 3/4 inch screws. You just get those 3 screws out, flip it back over, and we're going to get that ice maker off. All right, we got this thing flipped over. I'm going to free it up a little bit so we can have some slack to get the harness off. And there's a fuse also connected onto the bottom of this. That's on that purple wire there. So you get the harness out of the ice maker and then that fuse. You get those 2 things off and set that ice maker off to the side. Once that ice maker's out of the way, you get that harness off of where that ice maker was sitting. And I like to get that piece out of the way, which all you got to do is lift it up and she'll pop right out. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. But you can flip it on its side. Might be a little bit easier for you. But pull her up and she just comes right off just like that. But once you get that off, you can flip it around and you want to take off that fan. And all you need is a screwdriver, or you can even use your thumb. But anyways, you stick a screwdriver right up at the top. There's a nice hole for it. She pries right out. And then you just get that harness off of it. All right, so now that fan is off. That harness on the right-hand side, that pretty much is getting all removed. And every time where you see a connection, you just go ahead and disconnect it. And we're just going to get this harness out. So it's behind a clip there. And then there's another thing holding it up on the top. And I take dikes and I cut that part off. It's a heck of a lot easier than trying to get it out with some needle nose pliers or something. It's probably impossible. So go ahead and cut that off. And then you can pull that harness through that hole where the ice maker was. Now all we got to do is disconnect the rest of it. We're going to disconnect this auger motor next, and keep in mind where those wires are. The pink one is the closer one to you, and the white one is further away. So just keep in mind where those go. Remember that. Take pictures if you don't think you'll remember. But we're going to go ahead and get the rest of this off. So we're going to take that off. We're going to get this harness off the solenoid. That's the solenoid for cube dice. And there's another cable tie holding it on to the bottom part of the auger motor case. So I cut that one off too. It's a lot easier, save you some time. And then there's a thermistor right there you take out as well. Last thing to get is the ground wire, which is the fun part. But to get to that ground wire, you got to move that auger motor. So I flip it over on the other side and I take out the 3 screws that hold on the auger motor. And I have a long enough 1/4 inch nut driver to get in there to get that screw out that holds the ground wire in. If you don't have a long enough nut driver, you got to take off that U-shape looking thing on the front of that auger motor, which it should be reverse threaded. So you gotta, righty loosey, lefty tighty, but it's pretty tough to get off. So I recommend using a long nut driver like the one I'm using now, and you'll see how I do it. But if you don't have it, you'll have to get that front piece off. But I'm not gonna do it that way. I'm gonna do a little shortcut here, and it works for me. And it is a little tricky, but I get it done. So what I do is with this thing upside down, I lift up the auger motor, slip that nut driver into where that nut is, and it's not a perfect alignment, but it's good enough where you can get a good bite on it and get it off. But once you get that nut out, the rest of the harness comes off, and then you find out which harness you need to put back in and put in that harness. And we'll get to that here in a sec. All right, we got the old harness sitting in front of us, and we're going to grab one of the harnesses out of that box, and we're going to match them up, and we're going to see which one we need. And it's as simple as a match game. All you got to do is go down the harness and make sure all the connections match. Just keep in mind the only thing that's going to be different is the connection to the ice maker itself. And whenever you figure it out, set the old harness off to the side so you don't accidentally put the old one back in. Because if you put it back in, you're going to have to do it all over again. But if you're just curious or something, you could grab the other harness and see what's actually different. If you're not worried about it, just set both the old harness and the harness you don't need off to the side. Because once again, you don't want to put in the wrong harness. In the box, you'll also have two covers. One has a hole in it, and the other one does not. You just need the one without the hole if it's one without the push to start or the test button. That's the one for the test switch, and you can see those are the two wires that go to that test switch. So you don't need those two, so we're going to set those off to the side, and we're going to go ahead and put in this new harness. First thing you want to do is put in that ground wire, and it is a little tricky getting the ground wire back on. It's not a perfect angle. It's a lot easier with that auger motor out, but I like to do things the hard way sometimes. Well, I consider this the easy way. But anyways, we're going to get this ground wire back on and get the rest of it afterwards. And the rest of it's pretty much self-explanatory from here. You just do exactly what you did to take it off, but in the opposite direction. You remember to get this auger motor screwed back in first. But after that, it's smooth sailing. If you guys have gone this far, you guys can definitely get it back together. But if you guys need to, feel free to rewind, look at things again. You do want to make sure you get it right, but you guys pretty much got the hard part out of the way. And it's pretty easy from here. All right, once that's back together, there is one more thing you got to do before you put that ice maker on, or you could do it even after you get the ice maker on, but the bail arm. You got to take the bail arm off the old ice maker, and you got to take off that white piece that's on that bail arm and transfer it over to the new bail arm. There's not much of a difference in them, but there is a difference. It has a different bend closer to the ice maker side or the module side, and to get it off, you just get it out of the clips and on the left hand side, and you pull it out of the right side. And remember how you get that bail arm out, because you want to put the new one in the exact opposite way. If you put the bail arm in backwards, it won't fit right, and you'll be like, what the heck am I doing wrong? So just remember how that bail arm came out, and you can put the new bail arm back in. And then there's just holes for that bail arm to go back into. But once you get that in, you just put the ice maker in, then it'll be ready to put back in the hole. All right, it's back together, so we're going to put the whole assembly back into its home. And if you remember how fun it was to get out, it's going to be even more fun to get it back in. So all you do is just pretty much push it back through. You don't want it to catch on the harness though, so make sure it's not catching on the harness. But after you get past that, you got to get past the fill tube, which hangs down, so it's gonna stop you. But if you work at it, you'll be able to get it back in. But once you get that in, you hook the harness back up, put the cover on, whatever. But whenever you test it, you got to do the same thing we did earlier, getting into diagnostics, going to test 25, just so you can get power to it. So we're gonna get that done here in a few, because once again, we don't have power, and we won't have power up there until we go to test 25. That's the most important part of working on this ice maker on one of these particular models. So just remember, diagnostics, test 25 to get power to it. And on most new ice makers, they come pretty much ready to go at the fill cycle. So once power's applied, boom, she fills right up. So she's filling right now. And if you don't hear it fill or something like that, you'll have to jump it to the T in the H, and it should start that cycle, and it should fill at the very end of it. But once it fills up with water, she's ready to go. You put the cover back on, everything pretty much the way you found it, and she's ready to go. Should start making ice in 4 to 6 hours, maybe sooner. I always like to tell folks at least wait until the next morning before you think something's wrong, because it does take a little bit of time. But anyways, if this has helped you guys out, give it a like, subscribe, comment if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, y'all.